In the previous tutorial video, we completed the GUI design for our counter app. Let's recap very quickly, right? So that's our GUI design over here. So we actually got different GUI components. So we actually got text view. We got text view over here. And also we got the text view for the output over here, right? And also we got our text field for user to enter inputs. And also we got 3 buttons. So one here for initializing a counter, and also incrementing the counter, and also decrementing the counter. And you can definitely look up the IDs for each one of them. We already did this exercise over here in the previous video, so I don't need to repeat. All you got to do is look up the IDs in the relevant GUI components. For example, if you go to activity_main.xml, and if you go to, let's say this one here, click on the GUI components, and then you can see the ID over here, right? That's really important when you actually program the controller. Okay, that's what we need. All right, let me close the GUI over here. So now our main job will be to really program the controller so that the app, when launched, will be working. Let's see how we can do it. Let me first of all create a new package under this called model, which means we're going to create some class to really reflect our OOP skills, right? So let's now right click on EECS1022 tutorial.counter. Don't choose anything, don't choose the one Android test. We're not going to use this for this course. And also don't choose the test over here. We're going to touch upon that in a later video. Okay, only right click on this particular folder here. Right click and say new, and then go to package over here and call it model. So this model corresponds to exactly the model package which you have been seeing in your Eclipse project structure. Okay, so that means we're going to put in all the classes related to the logic of your application over here. In this case, only a single class, counter. However, for your lab number 7 and 8, you might need to define multiple classes in the model, which you know how to do it already. So we don't need to bother you for this week's tutorial. And for model, let me just create a very simple class over here, new, and then Java class, right? And then class. Oh, let's put a name. Let's say counter. Enter. And then, do you want to add the following file to Git? Let's not worry about it. Let's cancel, because we just want you to use the GitHub desktop to commit and also push. All right, let's see what we can do. You can see you got some package over here, right? Pretty much similar to your Eclipse. Let's now do it right away. I can give you the complete definition for now. Okay, so for this week, OOP is not really the focus, but connecting what you know already about OOP to Android Studio for application is the point. So let's say private integer, let's say value, right? So we don't really initialize the attributes in the beginning, right? That's what we did. Let me maximize it, and let's have a constructor. Let's say the constructor will take one parameter for the initial value. Let's say counter over here, and then int value. So because of variable shadowing, we got to use the this keyword. The value is assigned to value. All right, so we got the attribute, we got a constructor. So let's say we got accessor and mutator, right? So let's say public. Let's say integer, accessor returning integer, get value over here, and then we can say return this value. Have no problem with it. And also we need the mutators. Let's say public. Let's say void. It would be up to you how you design this method here. You can have 2 separate ones, increments and decrements, or you can simply have something called setCounterValue, right? And then that one can either be less than the current one or larger than the current one. It's up to you. But let me just say increment and decrements. So increments over here, and then not return, but we're going to say this value plus plus, right? You know about augmented assignments already, so I don't need to bother you. And also public void decrements over here, this dot the value minus. All right, that's the complete definition for the counter, right? We're done. Again, defining model classes is not really the focus for this week's tutorial, but connecting it to the controller will be the focus, right? Which I'm going to do right away. Let's go back to main activity over here, right? Let me do one thing right away over here. Very often, if you got multiple buttons that you want to actually manipulate some underlying objects, the object should be global, should be shared by all the buttons, right? So that's why you have to declare, rather than inside a particular control method as local, you want to declare as a global attributes at the class level. You can see this is a class for the main activity. So you want to define some attribute like a variable over here that will be shared by all the control methods corresponding to each button, right? So what I will do is I'm going to say counter over here, right? And it's going to suggesting that you're using the counter from over here. You can if you expand the import, we are using the counter from model, right? You can see the model package over here. And over here, you can say that it's private. That's okay. This is already the main, the entry point of execution. So you don't really need to say private. That's okay for this case, right? So counter, let's say C over here. Only declare that. And remember what I said before for onCreates. It's basically whenever you launch the app, it's going to execute this method here. It's pretty much like a constructor for your app. So you can think about that's something I said implicitly from the previous video. So this is like a constructor for the app. So when as soon as you actually it's kind of up to you. You can say as soon as the controller, as soon as the app is constructed, you can maybe say I want to initialize this global counter right away, maybe with some initial value 0. I can do that, right? Let me do that. So C is assigned to new counter over here. I can put some initial value 0, right? You can see Android Studio actually put so here put a parameter name over a value over here, which is different from Eclipse. So this value color has no effect on your code, right? It's just like an annotation to show to you, right? So as soon as the counter, you can think about as soon as the app is launched, even before the user actually enter any value over here, a counter object with initial value 0 is created right away. Okay, just remember that, right? Just over there. But we don't just we don't really display its value, because we only display its value either for this button here, or this button here, or this button being clicked, right? Let's now finish the coding, and then I need to give you a little bit tracing idea in a moment. Okay. And the next step I will do, so you can see so far we declare the attributes, and also we initialize it in the constructor for the app. And then we're going to copy and paste. You can find in the YouTube description or from your previous app developments. So we're going to copy over those 3 methods. Okay, you can see those are the 3 methods, right? So one is setContentsOfTextView, and also getInputOfTextField, and also getItemSelected, right? We strictly speaking, we don't really need this helper method, right? But you can put it here just in case if you refactor your design to include spinner. In that case, this will be handy. Let me keep it there. All right, you gotta move your mouse over, let's say for example, view over here, import a class, move over text view, import a class, move over edit text, import class, move over spinner, import class. All right, that's good. So now how many control methods do we need? We need 3. So one control method for this, one control method for that, and one control method for this. 3. Let's declare them first, and then we attach them to the GUI button right away before we develop them further. So we'll say public, and then void, and then we're going to say compute button. Let's say create counter clicked. And remember, you should really put an input parameter. It's just required by Android Studio. Okay, I think this might be something you just easy to forget, but you can always refer back to some working app so you remember. So this will be so we need to have 3 control methods for the 3 buttons. Okay, that's what we should do. Okay, that's the first one, and the second one I can copy and paste. So now compute button. So now rather than create counter, it should be increments. All right, and then we can copy this one. We got another one called decrements, increments, and also decrements. All right, so these are the three control methods, and then we can now attach them individually correspondingly to the GUI button. Let's now go back to the project over here and go under res, go under layout and double click activity_main.xml. All right, let's now go to initialize a new counter over here, and you can simply search for onClick right over here. And what should that be? It should be attached to compute button create counter clicked, right? You make sure you choose the right one. Okay, correct one. That's the one. And increment over here on click should be compute increment clicked, and decrement should be on click decrement clicked, right? Very good. And then once we're done, we can now go back to the MainActivity.java, right? So now each one of them has been registered or added to the corresponding GUI button. So now we just want to specify when the button is really clicked and the event created, exactly what should be executed inside this method, each one of them, right? Let's now talk about it. Okay, let me just maximize it. You can think about when the app is first launched, we simply initialize counter with default value 0, right? So now let's say for this one here, when we click on, let's try this. When we click on this particular button here, so that means we should retrieve the value from init value over here. The user may not just want 0, they might want something other than 0. We want to retrieve the integer value over here. However, notice that whatever that's going to be retrieved over here, which helper method should we use? We should really use, based on what we learned from the previous video, we should really use getInputOfTextField over here. That one unfortunately is going to return a string, meaning that if the user simply specified, because generally speaking, this text field can accept any inputs, even if the user say 2 over here. Of course, we assume there's no such user. We don't do any error checking for the purpose of this app over here. So we assume the user is going to enter some valid integer over here. However, when we retrieve it, it's going to be retrieved as a string with double quotes. So that means we're going to convert it into an integer. But how do we do it? Let's see. Let's say we do this over here. So when the create counter is clicked, first we're going to say string text init value. First of all, we retrieve the string. So which method should we call? We should say getInputOfTextField. So why don't we go there? And then what's the ID for that particular text field? Let's remind ourselves. It's going to be input init value. All right. So we're going to say r.id.input init value. Choose that one, right? So this will be only a string. And then basically what we want to do is we want to invoke whenever we want to click a button. We want to have some effects on this global object over here, C, right? So we want to basically say, let me go back here. We want to say C dot basic. We want to say maybe C is reassigned to another new counter, right? We just want to. I'll visualize this to you, but you should know what this really means. Okay, and this part over here should be some integer value. If I simply say text integer, text init value over here, it's not going to compile, right? If you move your mouse over, expecting integer, but we're giving a string, right? We should really convert it. So now this is something you can take for granted. Whenever you want to convert a string into integer, we'll convert from a string into a double. This is what you can do. You can say integer init value over here is assigned to. There is a class in like a utility class in Java called integer, capitalized. Dot parse int. And then we are making the assumption that whatever the user actually put on this text field can definitely be converted into an integer. So we don't do any error checking. We simply assume. All right, you can assume that as well. All right, for this one here, we simply say text init value over here. And for your information, if you're expecting some double value, what should you do? Okay, so for example, you can say also some double, let's say D. for example, right? Let's say in case you're expecting a double, you can say double dot parse double, and then the text init, just in case, right? Just for example, right? So you can also use double the parse double when necessary, but in this case, we should use the parse int, and then we're gonna put the int value over here. That's basically what you should do. So whenever you click on this particular button over here, what that will do is maybe C initially is pointing to some counter objects with value 0. When you click on this button here, it's going to reassign C to another object with the initial value retrieved and set it to be here. I will visualize it in a moment, but I just want to sketch very quickly. What about the other two? The other two will be rather similar, okay, but the good thing is the other two will be simpler, because when I actually click on this button here, do I expect to retrieve any input value? No, I don't need to use this anymore, because this button should have been clicked already, so which means the counter object is already there, right? So it can simply just increments. Okay, so they are actually different scenario which I can show to you, right? So before when I click on the increments, there are two scenarios. Either the create counter has been clicked, which means I will initialize this counter to this value over here. If the very first button click I did was this increment over here, so that means I'm still reusing, I'm still accessing this particular object over here that's being initialized to be 0, right? That's something I will visualize to you, so don't worry. So that what should we do? We can simply say C dot get value. C dot set. C dot increments over here. So that should be the effects on the on C, and also C dot decrements over here. However, we have only done effects on the model objects, right? Let me just put some comments over here. Retrieve inputs from GUI. Okay, and execute effects on model objects. So when I say model object, I mean objects instantiated from classes that we define in the model package. In this case, counter for sure is from the model package, right? So it would be the same for these two as well. Let me put the comments over here. However, if you only have some effects on the objects, which is going to be kind of hidden from the user, you're not really updating this particular text view, right? But we should do that, right? We did it already in the previous video. So for every button click, we should really output the value for the counter, the latest value, right? Output to the device string, right? So which method should we call? Helper method. It should be this one here, the first one. setContentsOfTextView. Okay, let's do it. Over here, and then which one do we want to set? r.id dot, and the one we want to choose will be output counter value, right? So let's now go there and then dot output counter value over here, right? And then what value do we want to set? If you like, you can simply put a string literal here right away. I can just put it like that, but otherwise you can simply say string like a greeting message, what we did before, right? Either way, let me just show you the shorter way over here. I can say counter value over here plus and c.get value, right? You can see for the controller, we are not really doing any computation about the counter. We simply just call the relevant methods from the counter, right? That's what we are doing, right? There's no intelligence for the controller, no intelligence for the view. The intelligence only sits in the model package. You just need to call the relevant method, pretty much like how we did for the console application, pretty much. Okay, we can simply reuse this line of code for every one of them, right? Because after you increment, you also want to know what's the latest value. Also, after decrement, you also want to know what's the latest value. All right, I believe that's it. Why don't we try it out? Okay, let's now simply, to be safe, why don't I stop this? All right, and then relaunch the emulator again. Okay, and then that's my emulator over here. Okay, initial value, let's say, oh, you know what? Let's say I don't put anything here just yet. if I simply say increments, so remember when the app is actually first launched, so that means the counter has been initialized to be 0, as we can see from here, right? And then, if I simply say increment, that'll go from 0 to 1. Counter 1, right? You can see decrements to 0 to -1, -2, -3, increment -2, -1, 0, and 1, right? You can see that, right? But now, if I say 23 over here, all right? Let's say I didn't click on the button here. So that means the value, the object has not been recreated with 23. So if I say increment, you see that I didn't click on this. If I say increment again, it's going to be 2, 3, 4, right? But now, as soon as I say initialize a new counter, that one there is actually going to invoke this method over here, which is going to reassign C to another new objects of counter with initial value, right? Let's see that. So if I say initialize a new counter, it's now going to be 23. And then if I say increments, it's going to increment on this new objects with initial value 23. So increment will be 24, 25, 26, 27, decrements 26, 25, 24, just one more. If I just try to do another one, let's say 10, right? And then initialize a new counter, do that, you can see now the counter value is 10. Decrements 9, 8, 7. Increments 8, 9, 10, right? Hopefully you get a feel about this counter object. There's only one object being created, and every time when you click on this button here, it's going to reassign the counter reference over here to a new object. And then after that, either you say increments or you do decrements button click, it's going to invoke the method on the same counter objects, right? And I might just need to visualize this very quickly together with you, and also to summarize about the separation between model, view, and also controller. That's what we should do now.